Hello everyone, welcome to GGN. This is part 2 for this news report today. It's December 12th, 2012, and I'm Darko. This is my website, ggnonline.com. Also on YouTube, ddarko 2012 and 2013 on my backup channels. If you are new to GGN, there's a news archive up here. I've been going since late 2009. You can see I kind of just did a couple there and there, just to experiment to see what would happen, see how people, what they thought. And now, 3 years later, I could tell you I've been doing about an average about 35 videos, something like that, a month. The last couple months, though, I busted out 50 and 53. So when I have a couple days there where there's no videos, it's either just a culmination of technical problems and just kind of burnt out. And I wanted to ask my longtime listeners and viewers what they thought as far as the content. Do you still want to see news like with Afghanistan and Syria, or would you rather have me focus on eugenics, surveillance, conspiracies with aliens, even stuff like that? I'm open to what you think. So, but I would like to thank all those listeners who have supported me for a good time now, good while. All right, so we're going to move on here. Afghanistan may be the focus of future, basically India-Pakistan rivalry. I saw some articles, like a group of them, so I had to cover this whole India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan little situation. It says another Mumbai-style terror attack, i.e. a false flag on India from Pakistan's intelligence, which is probably run by the United States, emanating from Pakistan, holds the potential of triggering off a nuclear confrontation, says a report by U.S. intelligence. They say they are identifying Afghanistan as the next focus of a future rivalry between the two countries. It says that normalization of India-Pakistan trade would be a critical factor in building trust between the two countries over the next few years. Then again, December 11th, Afghanistan may have direct military support from India, says the United States. The U.S. says it will have no problem if Afghanistan seeks any direct military assistance from India for its armed forces in dealing with security issues. It's funny how they say, "Oh, well, we don't have a problem," as if they're getting permission, because it actually comes up again right here. U.S. to back India's leadership role in Indian Ocean. Oh, gee, thanks, the United States. We didn't know that we weren't a sovereign nation. India expresses desire for Iron Dome system. They want the same system as the Israelis have. I like how they put this. The U.S., which helped fund the Iron Dome's development, well, the U.S., like I said before, is actually funding the entire Israeli military. So I don't think they just helped fund it. They bought it. And, it's good for the Israeli military-industrial complex, which, of course, like part of the hot wars, is not just to trim the grass, but also get their experimental weapons before they roll them out to defense contractors and countries or whatever. They basically, they test them. They're battle-tested, sealed, battle-tested approved. We've killed 900 children today with this weapon, with this missile. But the U.S. says it has not publicly said whether it backs the deal. So again, permission. U.S.-India military ties can alter world power dynamics, says a think tank. Again, those are the real policy makers, not your congressman, suggesting that the U.S. relationship with India has the potential to alter power dynamics in Asia and the world. A leading U.S. think tank has proposed a deeper military engagement between the two countries, which is why you'll see this. China's maritime strength, major concern for India, says an admiral. Indian admiral says that China's growing maritime strength in the South China Sea is a major cause of concern. So again, like these are, when this stuff comes out, these little propaganda press releases, like they're running a corporation, it comes from these think tanks. So, all the way at the bottom, I noticed this comment here. India wouldn't dare do that. They couldn't be able to dare such a move unless it was backed by the USA. U.S. to back India's leadership role in the Indian Ocean. U.S. Pacific Command to nurture strategic partnership and expand engagement with India in the South Asia Sea. So I think that's your answer there, Roslan Bayou, whatever. Next up, top U.S. officials in Asia to push for more influence against China. It says here, U.S. officials, including Leon Panetta, are headed to East Asia to jumpstart the new Obama regime's bid to expand its military and political influence in the region. They said this is part of the strategic Asia-Pacific pivot. Now, we just covered about how they're not actually, I think it was the same individual, too, that said that they're not leaving the Middle East anytime soon, right? They're going to maintain a presence. Well, how is it a pivot if you're going to maintain the presence? Well, because they can't do it alone. That's why they're going to rope other countries into doing it, like India. Next up, U.S. concerned over Pakistani Iran gas pipeline. It says here the president, Zardari, skipped his Tehran visit to finalize the Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline project. The U.S. envoy to Pakistan said his country has deep concerns on the project. Now, whether they have them or not, like I said, doesn't really matter. They're a sovereign nation. If Israel can have nuclear weapons and be outside the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty, then they have the right to defend themselves. But like Ahmadinejad said, these weapons are outdated. They go, they're Stone Age. Basically, he knows something that most countries and governments aren't going to talk about, which is they have all kinds of new weapons besides weather weapons that they use, saying that, it's pretty stupid just to say that we have nuclear weapons when most people have something beyond that. They said they have concerns about Iran's potential development as a nuclear power. We are not alone in this regard, and that strongly held consensus view of the international community. Well, who's the international community? Is there any votes or anything? No, that's actually the global corporations. Those are the private think tanks that hold meetings behind closed doors, where decisions are made behind closed doors. That's what they call democracy when they want to spread democracy. Interesting. So there's an energy shortage right now in Pakistan. And this is the U.S. ambassador to Pakistan that's been talking about this. It says here just a day before Pakistan's president made a dash for the UK, it goes on here and it says that he would stop over in Tehran for a day for bilateral talks where they would finalize this vital gas line project. It says the cancellation of the visit, so it was canceled, political observers believe was the result of U.S. pressure on Pakistan for not going ahead with concluding such a lucrative deal for Iran. The reason for the U.S. opposition to the project, saying that it would give cheap gas to energy-hungry Pakistan. Oh, both parties would be happy, and it would be both in their best interests. We don't want that. And funds to cash-strapped Iran, i.e. people that are starving and need medical supplies in Iran. U.S. military to boost Philippines' presence. Says China tells Army to be prepared. The U.S. and Philippine officials are expecting to agree an increase in the number of U.S. military ships, aircrafts, and troops rotating through the Philippines. Kind of interesting, too, because, you talk about India. Ooh, a former British colony. Well, are they still run by the British? That's this new covert, this is how they run these corporations, these globalists run these countries, these companies, by saying, oh, they're independent now, right? And saying that the Philippines is a former U.S. colony. They actually have Philippine, I think they have Thai Marines, too, but I'm pretty sure they have Filipino Marines, too. Actually trained and stuff like that. I've seen them in boot camp before with little Marine uniforms. I didn't even know they existed until they were in our little squad bay. So the U.S. says in talks with Turkey over Iran gas for gold. So again, there they go. U.S. diplomats are in talks with Turkey over the flow of gold from Turkey in exchange for Iranian natural gas. Turkey relies on natural gas imports from Iran and has been paying for it using Turkish lira. In turn, Tehran has used the lira to buy Turkish gold. Couriers carry the gold to Dubai, and from there it is then shipped to Iran. Back to old Zbigniew Brzezinski on Russia and Georgia relations. The former national security advisor thinks that Georgia can become an ally to Russia, but on the expense of its friendship with the U.S. So what's he talking about? He says, quote, Georgia is eventually becoming a candidate of Russia's ally, and on the expense of its friendship with the U.S., considering the meaning of the Baku, I guess it's Azerbaijan, and something else pipeline. This is only one part of the problem in Russia, as there are more problems in the country. In Russia, they should understand that they need to get closer to the West for flourishing and success. Otherwise, they will lose it with China. Oh, here we go. Democratization is one of the main preconditions for Russia's success, and this is likely to happen after Putin. You may assess this as a historic optimism, but I am sure that Russia's getting closer with the West is inevitable. And despite all this stuff in the media about Sovietization and pressing the reset button in the Cold War again, I think it's just a bunch of malarkey. I think all of these threats coming out of Russia by Putin and all them, it's just talk. It seems like so. And I don't know. I guess it's just hard for me to believe that after the whole Soviet Union that was imported into their country by Bolsheviks, by Jews and Zionists, that somehow they're not going to be the same. Well, they are. They're still reeling from that. But what I think you have in Russia is basically exactly what was supposed to happen. It's kind of a new type of system. I'm not really sure what even to call it. But they are a lapdog for the globalists. Georgia waiting for concrete steps from Russia. It says Georgia is waiting for concrete steps in the process of restoring relations with neighbor Georgia. Russia is building diplomatic and military tools to prevent Western resistance to its Eurasian Union. U.S. Secretary of State's recent remarks about this re-Sovietizing the countries of the former Union, with Clinton warning that the U.S. is well aware of Russia's intentions to rebuild its control over the former Soviet republics via extended regional integration and institutionalization under benign-looking labels of the Customs Union or Eurasian Union. Basically, like I said before, they don't like them or that the East doing what they do in the West with the European Union. But like I said, this is probably all just a show. They want to have a NATO for the West and NATO for the East. A European Union, a Central Eurasian Union, but it's all probably run by the same small groups of people. Because like I mentioned before, if this is somewhat of a communist system, they have to have some competition for it to actually run. So this is what you have: the East Bloc and the West Bloc, with a bunch of basically run on slave labor, and these technocrats and think tanks advising these puppet heads about what country or company they're going to exploit next as far as resources and cheap labor. And I think South America, I was just thinking about this yesterday, I think South America and Central Asia, like Kyrgyzstan and all that, Tajikistan, I think those places may be the future for cheap labor after China's middle class start demanding better wages. Russia, weary of post-Soviet evolution, a close advisor to the Russian president said the Kremlin was paying close attention to the events in the former Soviet republics. Goes on and says events are in motion in Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Ukraine, and we're dealing with it every day. Says those events, are they a danger for us? Yes, he was quoted as saying. So what they're actually referring to is color revolutions. Brzezinski's buddy, Brzezinski too, but Brzezinski's buddy George Soros, and that they run these color revolutions, a series of color revolutions, and that's not what they're going to call them, in former republics of Georgia and Ukraine during the early part of the 2000s, brought in new puppet governments that upset the status quo with Moscow. Here's an example. Azeri riot police detained dozens of anti-government demonstrations. This is in Azerbaijan. And this is, like many of you already know, a Zionist-occupied territory. The protesters are furious about the gap between the rich and poor, rampant corruption, and an economy highly dependent on oil. The gas triangle, which consists of China, Russia, and Europe, says the competition for Caspian gas supplies is usually seen as a contest between Europe and Russia. China, although acknowledged to play a role, is generally seen to be a marginal player. But a recent Chatham House event titled Rebalancing the World Energy Markets, the Role of China, Russia, and Central Asia, it was underscored that Chinese energy demand will have a profound effect on the energy markets in Russia, Central Asia, and Europe. And gas in particular is likely to become increasingly important in China's energy mix. Canada clears $15 billion Chinese takeover of an energy company. It allowed this Chinese state-run oil giant to take over a domestic energy company. China grabs Mideast oil as U.S. power dips. The China's muscling into Iraq's oil sector as Baghdad grapples with defections with international majors like Exxon and Chevron. It says here, de facto loss of sovereignty. Cyprus makes big concessions for a bailout. They want help from the European Union's bailout fund, but the price for billions in emergency aid money is high. The country will effectively lose its sovereignty, which is good for countries like Israel, who actually want to get in there and start getting some cheap energy. Breaking ice, Gazprom's tanker opens first Arctic sea route. The tanker carrying natural gas has successfully completed a trip through the Arctic Ocean from Norway to Japan. It became the first ship to try a safer route or trade route for gas supplies than the more risky routes in the southern seas. Alright, so I guess I'll just leave off here. We'll return in part 3 and talk a little bit about China, what's going on over there, and the economy, maybe some eugenics. This is GGN. I'm Darko. Thank you.